Hi, this is Josh Kulp. This is the video for Daf Samekh Aleph of Masechet Ketubot. And I want to go over a story today, a couple halachot that are connected to it, that I really find to be just remarkably sensitive stories that I think speak to the human condition and are as relevant in some ways today as they ever have been. There are a lot of great stories coming up in this chapter, some of the most famous stories in the Talmud, so I hope you will be studying diligently as you always do. The stories are not directly connected to Ketubot. They appear on the first Amud of Daf Samekh Aleph, and they have to do with one person waiting on another person, a shamash, a servant. I probably translated this as a waiter, but we should imagine that this is more of a fixed servant, not a waiter in a restaurant. Our relationship with a waiter in the restaurant is very temporary. Right? We're not there all the time. But our relationship with a servant, I don't have a servant in my home, but if you had a servant in your home, your relationship with that servant would be very different. So I want you to imagine that, and we'll talk about the meaning as we go through this. Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Chananya, Amar Rav Huna. So these rabbis said, you can delay in giving a servant any type of food except for meat and wine. In other words, if you're eating a meal and you're serving, let's say, asparagus or, I don't know, some bread or perhaps some bread and olive oil. I'm trying to think of things that maybe they ate back then, some vegetables. You can give the servant food later on. But if you're eating meat or drinking wine, you are not allowed to tell the waiter, the servant, that he can have his meal later on. You have to give him the food immediately. And that's because seeing somebody else eat such delicious food, such nutritious food, meat and wine, I know we don't think of wine as particularly nutritious now, but they did back then, would cause him pain. And therefore, we have to immediately tend to the needs of the person that is in front of us and not selfishly consume this good, tasty, nutritious food before that person's needs are served to as well. And skipping on a little bit for a second, they say that anything that has good taste or has sharpness, some kind of sharp taste, tasty, fragrant, good food, you cannot allow the servant to go hungry while you are eating. And then there are two stories of two Amoraim, rabbinic sages in the Amoraic period. One of them, in the first story, one gives the servant from every type of food and the other does not. And the one who gives the servant from every type of food, Eliyahu, speaks in front of him. And in the other story, one of the Amoraim gives the servant first and the other one gives him last. And again, Eliyahu speaks to the person who gives first. Now, first of all, we should note the image of Eliyahu here. Eliyahu is often seen as a defender of the poor, the less fortunate. At least that's our imagination. He's often comes disguised to people throughout the Talmud and later Jewish stories, comes disguised as a poor person. Eliyahu rewards these rabbis here. I don't think it's just a message about feeding the poor. Rather, I think it is a very strong sense of empathy that we're supposed to have for other people and how they see us act. In other words, we're supposed to look at the things that we have and imagine the broader world around us, whether it's a servant or other people who are perhaps we're somewhat responsible for, who do not have the advantages that we have, and we can imagine how difficult it is for them. We can imagine the feelings of desire, of perhaps jealousy, envy, emotions such as this that really make their lives difficult, that can be easily solved and that we have a duty to solve. Right? I'm not talking about complete income equality in this sugya, in this passage. What I'm talking about is the mandate that we have to look at other people and say, look, what must it be like for that other person to see what I'm doing right now? How must that feel? And can I rectify that situation, either by allowing that person to share in the goods that I have or allowing that person to at least taste some of the goods that I have. Again, I know this is a very difficult message. It's something that's difficult to actually accomplish. I am not a communist. I do believe that the capitalist system is probably the best overall for humanity, but that doesn't mean that as individuals we don't have a mandate to try to have that empathy for other people around us who are not tasting of the goods from which we are tasting.